LPL Brief. First of all, I'm not really sure why I said I'd do a video on the promotion tournament, since there wasn't really a whole lot to talk about. Yeah. I guess I can talk a little bit about why I think OMG won. I was expecting this for the most part because I think that OMG in general have better team play, but that's not what happened. What happened today was mostly just one, EPA had no idea how to fight in minions or out of minions, which is like super basic. Whatever. They honestly, there were instances where they took fights within the enemy minion wave at like level 2 or something and all in. OMG just better sidestep certain skill shots, mechanical entries, things like this. You don't give Poppy to Shi Young because it's like his one champion that he's really good at, and it's pretty good champion in general. like, whatever. So these are kind of the things that happened in the OMG set. Mostly it was just down to PA would just like constantly force things, and OMG reacted well. And they forced things at really awkward times. Like the bottom lane 2v2 force was weird. The dive into minions on top by Gimgoon happened a couple times where he tried to attack. Crisis had much less of a presence. So for me, OMG and EPA series today was just really the epitome of, better mechanical players winning. As depressing as that sounds. So that's about it. But I do want to preview the quarterfinals tomorrow because I think that's more interesting, especially since we had one upset. So I haven't talked anywhere, even briefly, about the VG Gaming versus WE matchup. That's the first one. So VG Gaming versus WE, they faced once in the regular season so far, and VG ended up winning that. And the way that Vici won was that the first game they did a very, very heavy jungle invade style. And this is something that teams have had success against WE with by invading the jungler, because Condi doesn't necessarily ward very well. And they play a lot around Condi's pressure. Condi and WE have the highest first blood rate in the game. It's actually really, really high relative to other teams. It's like 60-something%. And the highest after that is like 54%. So really, really effective at getting first bloods. Even though I think of WE as more of a team that scales and a team that does this, they're very good at, I think, counter ganking and understanding when to apply jungle pressure. Condi, as I also said, is much more aggressive on certain picks like Kindred or Lee Sin. He'll be super aggressive on those types of picks, but a lot of times he'll also just farm on things like Graves or things like that. So I think that this is going to be the big key here, especially since Dandy, both of these teams are very, very jungle centric, right? And I think Dandy thinks of himself as a jungle who carries by ganking, but he's really a jungle who carries by farming and carrying team fights and taking the kills himself, and he really needs to kind of start owning this. Very few junglers do I advise them to stop building Tracker's Knife and go Red Smite, but he would be like the only one. Because I think that they've finally trained the team enough such that even Caveman kind of knows where to place wards, and they're very good at coordinating some of this vision. And when you talk to the team, they say that during scrims, home points to places on the map. It says this is where you put the ward, and they just remember this. So I think that I want to say that Vici Gaming understand and are to a point as a team where they know where to place wards, and they don't have to rely on Dandy only to control vision. It's not an ideal situation to have a carry jungler not build a vision item, but I don't know, I just think that Dandy is in a unique situation where he really needs the damage. Long has been very stable. I don't think that WE will just give up Maokai every game. They might. I think 957 has a really weird champion pool. He'll have some games where he just seems really good and some champions that he just seems really good on. And then he'll just check out in other games and like get Flame Horizoned. 957, everyone acknowledges 957 as a very mechanically gifted player, but I think he's extremely inexperienced. For a while, him and Kondi were the highest on the Korean ladder. That is definitely not true anymore because the top like 5 accounts are 3/5 EDG at this point. 57, very good at climbing solo queue, very good individual player, but he doesn't necessarily show that on a consistent basis, and overall, right now, he looks like the weakest link on WE, whereas I think Long is a very, very strong, consistent player who's, you could actually argue, is in the top ranked LPL top laners right now, even though, you know, a lot of his success recently against Marin was using Maokai. I think his TP sense and Vici as a team just worked more cohesively around using that teleport and using Long and Dandy. Vici as a team are kind of able to identify where their strengths are and not and play to them, whereas I think that IG are a team that haven't really done that, and that was a big difference, is because I think IG and Vici both have really terrible bot lanes, but Vici have acknowledged it by not making them the main carries in their composition, but IG feel like the best way to compensate for that is to put a bunch of shields and a bunch of pressure onto onto Rain as their carry. It's not working at all. So yeah, I think that would be the main difference in my mind of Vici and IG, is that Vici seems like a team that really understands where their strengths are overall. WE, for me, don't have any concept of strategy like that. Their wording is not very good. They rely a lot on Kondi being able to take initiative and invade. So right now, I really feel like VG are going to take this. It's just there's this slight advantage. I think overall, on the roster, WE have better individual players. I would say the advantage on Vici goes to jungle and top. Mid, because of the specific way in which Izihun has to impact the game, he has to have some sort of global mid pick. He has to hold the lane. He's not really a carry. He has a kind of limited effective champion pool. Maybe not necessarily by what he can play, but by what his team demands. I would give it to Shia, not because I think Shia is a better player, but because I think that Shia does more overall in terms of what is required of him. He's had games where he's carried. He's had games like this. So I would say that mid and bottom are actually WE favored, and the team overall play better around those roles than Vici does, but I would say that topside is Vici, and so in the sense you get this idea that WE is slightly favored in terms of well-rounded comprehensiveness. Dandy for me is a candidate for best player in the LPL. He has been all split, essentially. So you can make some argument that Vici had the better players just because they have Dandy, but that bottom lane, man, I mean, today the casters were kind of talking about how Endless's Ash arrows were good, but he had like a 1 in 10 actually land. I was not seeing Endless stepping up at all, honestly. He still felt like he was only really performing because Dandy was going to his lane and ganking for him. He wasn't doing super well in the matchup by himself. He was a big reason why they lost the second game. So for me, this is going to be something that we really are testing for WE, is how hard can Shia and bot lane push this advantage if the jungle is tied down. Because if Shia can get some sort of advantage in mid by pushing out, and if the bot lane can get some sort of advantage by pushing out, that's one half of the map that Dandy can't invade, and that's one half of the side of the map that Kondi can control if he plays intelligently and if he does utilize vision. These are all really, really big ifs for WE because I haven't seen that kind of intelligence come out of them yet. They really, really are a team that plays better from late game team fights when Mystic gets a pick that's really good for him, like Ezreal or sometimes Lucian. If he gets a pick like Ezreal in particular, like I actually think Ezreal's a worthy ban against WE, then he can really take over a late game team fight. So in the late game, if WE don't fall behind too much from VG's invades and strategies like this, I think that it will go to WE. So if they can make the game last longer than 30 minutes, I think WE are favored. But I think VG will be able to take this initiative and end the game through jungle invades and controlling the top side much faster than yeah, I'm gonna go with VG on this one, but I think it'll be pretty close. Fairly interesting series. This leaves EDG versus Snake. Similarly, the casters were kind of saying, you know, Snake showed some great improvements. They showed some great stuff. I think they can win the LPL, and I really disagree. And this isn't against casters, because one, I know that in the heat of it, it's like the team's performing well. You gotta hype them up. You gotta say, wow, they're looking improving, like they're improving and all this other stuff. But Snake got like the most broken composition I've ever seen against, except it didn't have Maokai, so or Echo. Oh well, IG took Echo, but they put it mid, and they built a tank with no damage sources really other in the early game other than their bot lane, which we've already discussed how that works. They had no early pressure at all, so of course Snake just took over the entire game. Like, this is not something that exciting. They made several early game fumbles. I do think just by virtue of having a better team fighting composition, the Snake's team fighting looked better than it actually is. Poppy Azir. Okay. I am not. For me, this team doesn't necessarily convince me, because I think that when they are ahead, they can get some surprising advantages by understanding which lane to pressure, how to 1-3-1. But when they're behind, they make much more mistakes. If they're even, they make much more mistakes. IG historically have not done well in the swap, so from my perspective, it was expected that they wouldn't trade turrets back, you know, because this is how Snake beat them in the regular season as well. EDG are really interesting because I think that they have used their time to kind of understand the swap and fast push better. They have actually taken advantage of being able to learn to swap and manipulating these side advantages. But sometimes Core will die in the swap, or they'll make these small mistakes, but I think overall their concept and their understanding is better. So this is why, from my perspective, the Snake won't be able to take advantage of that as quickly. And also, EDG are the team that averaged the most towers taken at 15 minutes. They average almost 2 towers taken at 15 minutes, I think. So it's actually rare for an LPL team. So I think that it won't be a situation where Snake can just take advantage of them by understanding which turrets to take advantage of. I also think that their draft priority will be much better than IG's. They've prioritized picks like Azir before. They've put Korowin is actually a good Maokai player. So to me, this is just going to be a series that EDG still wins pretty easily. But just because I think EDG better understand team fights as well and all these other aspects. So I really don't think Snake is a team that's going to advance past this round. This is going to bite me in the ass, but that's my prediction for now. In any case, one thing that will be interesting for this is like if they can get an advantage from top, because EDG do more and more ignore their top laner. I think they need to get better vision on top side around Quoro to mitigate some of these factors. But that's my general prediction for the EDG series. So that's it.